Crowdfunding is kind of exciting, don't you think? You have an idea, you create a program, you lay it out for the world, the crowd comes to you, they surround you with money, support, positive feedback. The scary part is, not everybody in the crowd is there to help you out. There are people whose business is copying successful crowdfunding projects. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The way you protect yourself is with your intellectual property. And everything you need to know about intellectual property is right here. Coke is the king of intellectual property. They protect it with 4 items that are essential for every crowdfunding project. There's the copyright on the images. Nobody can copy their images without their permission. There's the trademark on the name. If you ever want to get sued, put this name on one of your products without Coca-Cola's permission. The technology, you may not think there's much of an invention here, but the technology in the bottle is protected by utility patents. And actually the shape of the bottle is protected with design patents. Those are the 4 sort of tables to your intellectual property legs to your table. So how does this apply to a crowdfunding project? I have here an olive clip. Actually, this is not an olive clip, just a second. I have here an olive clip. No, I'm sorry, this is not an olive clip either. I have here an olive clip. And I know it's an olive clip because Patrick O'Neill, the president of Olive Clip, sent it to me. So I said, Patrick, I need some show and tell for my talk. He said, well, how about if I send you an original and 2 counterfeits? I said, that would be perfect. Olive Clip designed this about in 2011, I believe. They went through 100 iterations, 3D printing, adjusting the shape, adjusting the technology, getting it just right. They launched on Kickstarter and raised $68,000. They took that money, they delivered a very high quality product. Apple was so impressed, they started carrying it in the stores. And last I checked, they had sold over $10 million worth of these. The counterfeiters noticed, and they bought one. They were a backer on their project. And once they got it, they made copies and started selling them at 1/3 the price. Olive Clip, fortunately, was prepared. That's a counterfeit listing on AliExpress. It's a Chinese-based website that sells into the United States. They copied the trademark name, the images, the packaging. They took the visuals right off the Kickstarter campaign. Okay? When I was showing this before, I showed it to Alicia. I said, Alicia, can you pick out the counterfeit? She saw it right away. She's a photographer. She said, these 2 are crap. That's a nice product. And that's what happens is when people start buying the crap and they think it's yours, they start 1-starring you on Amazon and destroy your reputation. Now, fortunately, Olive Clip was prepared. All right? We mentioned the 4 legs to the table. They had registered the copyright on their images. They registered the trademark on their name, which, by the way, is an outstanding trademark. If you put Olive Clip into Google in quotes, you'll see over 1 million hits, and it's all them. which makes it very easy to find the counterfeiters who are using your name. Does that make sense? Pick a good name. Put some time and effort into that. They also had design patents on their shape and utility patents on their technology. And they didn't file just in the US, they filed internationally, including China, where they actually do respect intellectual property. So they were prepared, and when the counterfeiters struck, they struck back. They hired a professional monitoring firm, Mark Monitor, who would scour the web looking for counterfeits, verified they were counterfeits, took appropriate action, and the counterfeits were taken down. This is a never-ending process. One pops up, and about a week later it's taken down because of this monitoring service. Now that sounds great, but it's not cheap. And as Patrick explained to me, I don't know how the average Kickstarter project could afford what I'm doing. The monitoring alone is about $15,000 a year. So since many of my clients are on Kickstarter, my patent clients, and many are faced with this counterfeiting problem, and the cost is just too much to start, how do you deal with it? But we've been working with this, and we think we've developed some methodologies where you can actually do it yourself. And it turns out that all of the major selling sites have a complaint department. And so if you find a counterfeit listing and you verify it's a counterfeit, you can register a complaint, provide evidence that you own the intellectual property, and they'll take them down. There's a little bit more to it than that. And I just wanted to conclude by saying we are trying to put together a training program so that anybody out there with a crowdfunding project can go to, say, Skillshare, where we would have this up, and you would learn how to do this with all the resources necessary. How about that? Intellectual property in 10 minutes or less. Does anybody have any questions?
I have one.
Yes, go ahead.
Here's my favorite.
Go ahead.
Hey, I want you to promote my campaign on Kickstarter.
Right.
And then, hey, should we need Indiegogo too? The answer is no. A lot of them now, they're knocking off the actual campaign.
That's right.
Running a mirror campaign
Yep.
on the other platform in concert, and then that just waters it all down. I'm promoting now 2 campaigns practically because they're doing a search for or whatever, and except for the link in the press release or the actual media outreach, the backer gets confused. Which one am I backing in that? I mean, did they stop that too? Did Indiegogo report them? Or vice versa,
As a matter of
Kickstarter?
fact, they're not one of my clients, but I do know a project, they had it up on Kickstarter, and someone else copied their campaign up on Indiegogo.
Yep.
And so they had to go over to Indiegogo and they pulled it down. You have to be vigilant. Yes?
What stage do you see touching?
You want everything in place before your project goes live. Because they're watching. You know, I've seen projects show up on Taobao in China before the crowdfunding campaign is over. That's how fast they are. So you need to be ready to move. Sure. Yeah. Right. I think what you're talking about is something called a bar date. And this is particularly true with patents. If you offer your product for sale, and running a crowdfunding campaign would count as that, in the United States you have 1 year to get your patent on file. Similarly, if you make your idea public, in the United States you have 1 year to get a patent on file, but the rest of the world is gone. There's no grace period in the rest of the world. Once it's public, if you're not on file, you've given it up. In the back, yes?
What are the costs associated with all practice patents?
That's a great question. The copyright's the cheapest, and you can pretty much do it yourself. You go to Library of Congress, you upload your images, you pay some small fee, I forget what it is, and your copyright is registered. Next comes trademarks. That's also possible to do that yourself. The reason why you would use an attorney to help you with that is to make sure you have a good trademark. But you could certainly register your own trademark. That's well within your capability. What's that?
Internationally or no?
Internationally, I suppose you could, but why spend all your time figuring out how to do that? Just hire someone that'll do it for you.
Trademark with a full title search cost me about $2,500.
Yeah.
With the attorney, he did the whole title search to make sure that my name was good, there was nobody else out there using it. You can go to the US PTO, US Patent Office, and use the tool, but I chose PC.
Yeah.
There's other filing fees.
That's right. That's right. When you get into patents, now you're talking some real money. You can theoretically do your own provisional patent application, but just so you know, I charge $1,900 for provisional, and but that only lasts for a year, and before that year is out, well, if your Kickstarter or your crowdfunding campaign is a great success, then you move on to the more expensive patent applications, which can run $8,000 to $15,000. But if it fails, you've avoided that cost. Okay. Yes.
If someone, let's say you didn't protect yourself, but you were the first to actually begin marketing that this is your product, this
Right.
is your service.
Yeah.
Is there protection for you in a sense because you were the first to market?
Nope.
So if you're out there and then someone patents it, they could say stop doing that. Like,
That's a more complicated question.
right.
If you're out there, they can't get a patent.
Okay, so if you're out there doing it, they technically can't patent your product. Because
Right.
You didn't protect yourself.
That's
But
right.
They can make an alteration and patent that.
Yes, they can.
Okay.
Yes. Mhm.
You know, in this book that I was telling you about earlier, licensing, because that's what I was going to do.
Right. Right.
Is it true? I mean, it's great that provisional patents give you a year to
Mhm.
see if your product has legs.
Right.
Potential.
Right.
But I read in this book that even though you have a provisional patent in place,
Mm-hmm.
what really matters and what really counts is who gets it on the shelf first. Is that true?
Well, I think there's a lot of questions wrapped up in that,
Okay.
but yeah, you want to get your product out there.
Because it's just little old me. and
You wanna get it
what I
out.
wanna
Yeah, sure.
do Is in the lingerie industry, there are tons of lingerie companies that are bigger than me.
Right. Right.
And so I just read in the book that, in this book, that at the end of the day, what really counts is who gets it to the shelf first. I just want to know if you believe that to be true, but it sounds like it is a two.
In the sense of being commercially successful, you want to get out there as quickly as possible. However, if someone rips you off and goes out there and is a smashing success, and you have the patent, that'll work. You can take all their profits away from copying your idea, even though they went out there more than you did. Yes.
Is there any benefit to getting a state trademark versus a federal trademark in terms of establishing first use or something like that?
Trademarks is a little outside of, I'm pretty much a patent guy, but I certainly wouldn't rely solely on a state-based trademark, but you should talk to your attorney about that and figure out an overall strategy for what you're going to file with.
Actually, I just wanted to say, I'm not attorney at all.
Right.
But, you know, I did file a trademark for a company myself. It just happened that, we filed no opposition, so we put it up. Basically, from what I understand, it's much better to file in your own state. And if you do it only in the state, and somebody else does it in another state, you're going to run into conflicts, right? What you need is, for that to happen, you need evidence of interstate commerce to show that. So we had an app, it's very easy to show
maybe one more question before we open it up, right?
So, here's the thing. Let's say you didn't file a patent, or let's say you did, and then much bigger guys just sort of anyways.
Right.
You're a small fry.
Right.
To fight a big guy, couldn't you just bleed you in attorney's fees and you wouldn't have?
Depends upon how much money's at stake. Remember BlackBerry?
Yeah.
There was a little guy with a patent. They tried to blow him off, and he wound up with $1 billion. Okay? So, but he had backers. It's an investment, and there are investment funds. If you have an infringed patent that's valid, there are funds that will support the litigation to go out and get justice. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.